Hello everybody, this is Jim Morentz to the XchangeCore community, and we're here to see the most distant XchangeCore presentation that we've ever had from Queensland, Australia, applying XchangeCore usage to emergency management. Located in Brisbane, we've got a group from Intelligent Pathways as well as from the System Development and Support Branch of the Queensland Fire and Emergency Services. And the three of them are going to talk today about an experience over the last couple of years of a very exciting XchangeCore usage implementation. So let me turn it away to Wayne from Fire and Emergency Services.
Good morning. My name is Wayne. I'm a director with the Queensland Fire and Emergency Services and working at Station Disaster Coordination Centre.
Good morning. This is Angela Johnson. I'm the Queensland Delivery Manager here at Intelligent Pathways.
And Jeremy Ford, Application Development Lead for Intelligent Pathways, involved in this project.
So today we're going to be talking to you about how we've applied the usage XchangeCore to emergency management here in Queensland, as Jim has previously introduced. The agenda today, firstly, is about us Intelligent Pathways. Secondly, then moving on to the business need with Public Safety Business Agency, PSBA, and then why XchangeCore usage was selected, the use case that we've applied that to, and then really how IT has applied that to the actual business scenario. So we'll be looking at the system architecture, solution architecture, the information exchange service, and then looking at the business outcomes and the future and additional use cases. So about Intelligent Pathways. Intelligent Pathways was established in 2003 by our founder Gary Crosby. Gary's vision was to solve business problems, improve business productivity by improving business processes while mitigating risk. Now with a team of over 65 employees of both business and technology professionals, we are based here in Brisbane and in Sydney, with the team growing as the vision remained, but the team has grown but the vision remains the same. The organisation offers services in strategy and architecture, systems integration, and applying that to application mobility. To date, the primary industry channels that we've worked within are government, aviation and travel, education and construction. So Intelligent Pathways are engaged by the Queensland Government to work with them to develop the usage XchangeCore to meet their business needs. Our previous experience in data exchange included the aviation sector. The Aviation Information Data Exchange is an information standard for exchange of flight data and the information between airports, airlines, vendors and systems. Intelligent Pathways has worked with Sydney Airport to bring them onto the standard exchange platform. In environmental data management, Intelligent Pathways developed Eden Suite, a software solution developed to support all carbon management reporting needs, including data management, monitoring, analysis and reporting. Eden Suite has rolled out to the whole of Victorian Government who are using the tool as their environmental data management solution. This is a large part of our business. Using service-orientated architecture principles, we utilize market-leading technologies such as Oracle, MuleSoft, Axway, and other open-source tools for both architecture and implementation. Our application development team use predominantly Java for development, and we have, over a period of time, developed applications for Qantas, American Express Global Business Travel. In addition, we have developed mobile applications including Jetstream, an in-flight cabin crew mobile solution, and we are currently working with Queensland Ambulance on developing an application. I'm now going to hand you over to Wayne, who's going to talk about the PSBA business need.
Public Safety Business, just by a bit of background, the Public Safety Business Agency is a government AR department who provides a range of services, including IT support, to the public safety portfolio within Queensland. So hence they were heavily involved with the implementation of this service or this product into our business needs. The PSBA particularly looked at some recommendations from a range of reviews or recent disaster events and reviews that have occurred in that in Queensland, and looked at the issues particularly focused around situational awareness and having a single source or point of truth for disaster management information. The Kelty review, which was a significant review for us, required the agency, PSBA, to develop an information exchange to work within the systems that we use within the state. This pilot was developed, tested, and has been now implemented into our normal business procedures. The background, following a visit by several of our key disaster management stakeholders over to the United States of America, approximately 12 months after Hurricane Katrina, we were offered the use of the XchangeCore or USENS technology, following the successful rollout and use of that product through or within the Homeland Security. Our ICT technology solution needed to be developed to provide situational awareness, our decision support, our event management, and log our critical decisions to ensure that urgent attention and time of the completion of the activities were completed. That's been a key activity is the situational awareness that the Exchange provides for us. Also, another principle which all participants are heavily committed to is that we should, as far as possible, exchange our data sets, whether it's relatively important to us at that point in time or some other time down the track. We've gone great lengths to source advice from our privacy commissioners to ensure that we, by exchanging data sets, whether that information is also relevant, is immediately obvious or not, is a legal activity for us to do, and we have good support by the privacy commissioners to allow that to occur. Our value, if a request is created within another jurisdiction, so within one of our local disaster coordination centres, we now have a visibility of that information or a request that might be coming through. That's visible to us at the state level structure immediately and provides us greater situational awareness and gives us some additional time to prepare in the event that a request may come through to the state. Queensland Fire and Emergency Services is the lead agency within Queensland for the state's disaster management arrangements. We have legislative responsibilities in place for local disaster management groups to establish local disaster management groups. These are based on the local government authorities. We also have disaster districts, which are based on the police districts within the state. So there's 78 local governments, 23 disaster districts, and the state as well. As with all such systems, we all have our own particular system that's been developed for our particular purpose. That's at the local level, at the district level, and at the state level. These three different systems, there's no direct interoperability between the three systems, and the exchange allows for the exchange of data between those systems to effect what we call QDMA RFAs, so Queensland Disaster Management Requests for Assistance. And this can be as for a range of diverse requests, and as the example there is anything from helicopters to plant machinery to bedding or to personnel. Previously, once a request had been issued or requested and it left an email or left a fax, there was no visibility by the initiator as to the status of that request. The exchange has now allowed us, through the approvals and the escalations and the notations that are included with that, for the requester to have full visibility and situational awareness about the delivery of the product when it's or the services or support that's required when it's anticipated will be ready and due. Just a small schematic on our use case. So we have the exchange sitting in the middle there. We have our QDMA requests process on the left-hand side there, and how it escalates between the three different systems that are used within the state. I'll talk about the SES request tracker system on a slightly later slide, and we have our SDCC event management system, a non-based product, which we use as our core product for the management of all of our information in the State Disaster Coordination Centre. The exchange allows us to move information with the necessary approvals and escalations between these various systems.
So when the information exchange platform was first considered, there was a proof of concept that happened between the various suppliers and participants in this network, and that was directly using the UCITS or XchangeCore API, and each vendor was writing and reading directly to the incident schema provided by the structure that comes with the XchangeCore. With going forward with this, we've enhanced our network such that we define a data schema specific to each use case, and this enables the consistent data capture and sharing between the multiple platforms and vendors. And this essentially becomes our information exchange service. So we have many of them running inside the One Exchange platform. This way we can restrict our usage to these information asset definitions, and really, it abstracts the IXP vendors away from the standard XchangeCore usage incident to avoid any ambiguity surrounding the use of one incident to describe many different use cases. We've also, for each different use case, had to implement different business logic. So we have rule-based notification and entitlement engine built into it to, force the integrity and whatever other business logic needs to be applied to the use case. We've also defined a common JSON REST layer as the public endpoint for each implementation. This is consistent across all IXS services, and this also, as part of that, we've introduced our policy enforcement. We've got detailed auditing so we can see everything that's happened, as well as guaranteed delivery via different mechanisms. So sometimes we'll send out a JSON request, or it could be an XML post, or it could be a PDF via email, all as the result and executed at the same time. So a quick diagram to show the system architecture that we have in place. We've got the XchangeCore usage as the very core of the platform, and this provides the core persistence and notifications that are used by all other systems. We've got a central authentication system that wraps the authorization and authentication across the whole platform, so every request coming in and out of the platform has to be and is handled by the CAS. We then have a section of utility services such as the notifications, entitlements, and our own member registry database that we use for managing who can subscribe, or who has subscribed to the platform, who is allowed to publish, and details on where we actually send the notifications back to them. So configuration for their REST endpoints, email addresses, etc. Then we can see essentially we have, at the moment, we've got 2 IXS nodes, and these handle the different use cases for each. And these are obviously very different structures, but they all tie into usage. So we've deployed this for the PSBA on our cloud infrastructure. It's deployed in a clustered environment because obviously being part of a disaster management system, it has to be 24/7. It's running on a multi-MySQL database cluster, and with the XchangeCore and our other applications deployed, Java 8 Tomcat applications. We had to, as part of this, we upgraded the XchangeCore usage code so that we could store all the incidents in a MySQL database. We're using the open source central authentication service, as I said, which manages all authentication into the platform. We have a JSON REST layer that we've published instead of using XML. The requests and incidents has specific information and business requirements, and these are segregated and implemented and deployed into individual IXS applications. Although they may be separate IXS applications and separate business requirements, each of them has an identical REST API pattern, which has allowed multiple vendors to integrate to the different IXSs in an easier fashion without having to relearn how the IXP works. So the exchange is managed on a publish and subscribe model, so we have vendors that will publish information, and then we have those who can subscribe to information, and these don't have to be the same systems. We have some systems which just subscribe and want to hear about the incidents and have no ability to publish back into the Exchange platform. But the biggest outcome was obviously being that once data is updated by its owner, everyone has immediate access to that information. So we can see here, this is just a deep dive into the information exchange service. We can see at the very bottom we still have our usage XchangeCore, which handles all the persistence of the incidents for each access. So this is using the resource instance, resource profile, and obviously as part of that it generates the notifications. So we have layers above that which do the translation from our data model into the incident that comes part of the usage XchangeCore platform. And then we have our notification engine which listens to all the notifications coming out of the core and guarantees delivery to the IXS, and the IXS then takes responsibility for working out which vendors need to see this notification and make sure that they each get that delivery. It also has an error queue, so sometimes a vendor will be offline. They can come back in and pull down any other incidents and updates that they may have missed. So I guess a quick summary is that it provides a consistent network integration paradigm through an abstract but consistent definition. We have to control access to all information assets. Some of them will have sensitive information, and we need to be able to restrict access to this, and including the frequency that people can actually get and publish information. It provides the core validation of the information so that we know that all information that has to be provided for each use case is provided. So, and we're then transforming that information, I guess, which is proprietary, into the industry standard incident schema. This is presented down to the XchangeCore for sharing, and which obviously generates the notifications which filter back up through subscriptions and notifications, which are then have the policy applied to them to ensure that only those people that have to get them and can get them do get them. And we do have a guaranteed subscription mechanism so that we can ensure that everyone will eventually receive the information that they expected to receive.
I'll just talk about some recent examples of the use of the exchange in Queensland. Tropical Cyclone Marsha was a severe category cyclone which impacted the central Queensland coast in February 2015. There's a small regional community, Rockhampton in central Queensland, that and a coastal community of Yabun were heavily impacted by Tropical Cyclone Marsha. The use of the exchange ultimately resulted in 8 RFAs, QMA RFAs being transmitted right through to the State Disaster Coordination Centre by the IXP during that response. A number of additional RFAs were also executed at the disaster district level without the need for state support. This particular area, as with significant disaster events such as a tropical cyclone, severe tropical cyclone, there was a large impact on the communications infrastructure. As a result, a number of RFAs were entered on the local government's behalf at the disaster district where the communications impact wasn't as significant. This resulted in a number of duplications. However, through analysis of the RFAs that were in the system and through good communications with the district, we were able to identify the duplications and remove them from the active list of jobs or tasks that we were working on. Through the protocols that were established when we put the process in place, we have a number of approvals, escalations, the ability to request additional information, all seamlessly throughout the exchange. We then also have the ability to de-escalate an RFA back down through from the state to the disaster district, essentially handing the RFA back to the disaster district, and then also de-escalate further down to the local area, where they then still have the ability for that situational awareness to understand when the requests are being actioned and what the delivery information of those requests are. So it's really will greatly improve our situational awareness and visibility of requests at all levels throughout the disaster management system. 2015-2016 was our quietest season on record, quietest disaster season on record. We certainly had no significant activation of the disaster management range in Queensland. So as a result, we weren't required to use the Exchange in an operational context this year. That being said, however, it is actively utilised in a training environment. An additional use case that of the use of the Exchange and how we use it within Queensland is within our state emergency service. So our volunteer emergency services organisation that we have within Queensland, which is some 6,000 or 7,000 strong volunteer organisation. And these people respond to a range of activities on a daily basis, everything from a road crash rescue in the rural remote parts of Queensland through to searches, through to response to significant disasters such as tropical cyclones and flooding. The SCS receive public tasking through our 132500 telephone number, which is a community telephone number which the public can call at any time for support. This is picked up and received by a state telephone call centre, and then through a public-facing website is tasked into our SCS tasking system, SCS TMs. The Exchange allows the movement of information between the public-facing website, the call centre, and SCS TMs product. This can range from a couple of tasks per to hundreds and even up to thousands of jobs per day in a significant disaster. We have the ability through the protocols that are established with the Exchange to isolate certain areas to ensure that telephone calls that originate from particular areas go to an additional call centre, which is the Brisbane City Council. So Brisbane City Council is our largest local government within Queensland. Significant resources, very well resourced, and we run the business slightly different in relation to the SCS tasking for areas within the Brisbane City Council area. So through these rules, tasks for the Brisbane City Council area go directly to the Brisbane City Council call centre. Additionally, we also have RSS feeds from SCS TMs, and these are distributed down through to the local government's systems, so a protocol Guardian, for situational awareness to disaster managers within the local government areas about the number and types of jobs that the SCS are dealing with within their particular local government area. This provides them greater situational awareness about the scope of jobs, scope of tasks that are out there for the state emergency service, which is a good indicator, particularly around the types and levels of damage the community has sustained.
Well, that's it from us. So thank you very much for your time, and I'm sure if there's any questions, they'll be directed to Jim. Thank you.
Well, and I'd like to thank Wayne and Angela and Jeremy for a great presentation. Having worked with you for the last 3, maybe even 4 years, it's very exciting to see the results of it. And for those of our XchangeCore community members who have been following XchangeCore, there are a few things that are really exciting. And I'm going to emphasize these because Queensland has deposited the source code for this IXP implementation into the XchangeCore code repository. And those of you who are familiar with our GitHub site, you can go in there, poke around, and pull that down and explore what they've done, because there are a handful of really exciting things. The first one that they mentioned was that the standard sort of generic incident definition done out of the National Information Exchange model doesn't fit everything. So they've developed some specialized components of data definitions and structures that then use the XchangeCore infrastructure for very unique applications to make certain, as was mentioned, to make certain that there is no confusion in the data that needs to be exchanged. So that's a real advantage and something you can all do with the XchangeCore infrastructure, is to compose that specialized data, either in the more complicated and sophisticated way that Intelligent Pathways did, or, as many of you are familiar with, what we call the other pesky data, the ability to fold information into that incident work product. Second thing they did was put a layer of additional rules on top. And those diagrams that you saw with XchangeCore at the core and other layers of processing on top of it. XchangeCore has some very basic rules on how to share individual incidents and how it composes and orchestrates the data. But then when you want to develop something more sophisticated in being able to share in more refined ways, Intelligent Pathways did a very, very nice job on that. And again, that's part of the code that's in the code repository. Third item that they did, and were first in the world to do it, and we learned that lesson, was to use MySQL or SQL database instead of the inherent open source database that was originally packaged as part of XchangeCore. XchangeCore 2.0 has now adopted that. So it is the basic distribution database is now a SQL database. But the Queensland folks were the first to do that, and we took a look at that as we were developing that as part of the project that we did for Northern Command to develop a SQL backend. Next piece, the assured receipt of information, very critical one. XchangeCore does not address that, because as soon as we hand the information off to the application, assurance takes place out at the application level. Pushing that in and gathering that code to do the assured receipt out to the application is very, very nice addition to that. Really a level of bookkeeping that XchangeCore as a core set of infrastructure has never had a chance to do. So that's a great advantage for everyone. And then finally, for me personally, the most exciting component is the movement to the JSON format with the standard REST endpoints to do standard puts and gets and all the other REST commands to be able to gather that information. That's a very, very valuable improvement, and one that, well, again, is available in the code repository. It's something that we're looking for a next XchangeCore project to be able to move that directly into XchangeCore and have a couple of things that may be in the offing for that. So for those of you who have been following XchangeCore for a long time, some wonderful, wonderful improvements to the technology. And you saw the way in which they were handling both big incidents as well as small day-to-day activities in the volunteers that can run into the hundreds or even thousands of incidents, as it were, requests for support to be able to handle that in their XchangeCore cluster. So very, very nice job, Wayne, Angela, Jeremy, not only for the presentation, but also for the super work that you've done for Queensland. And we commend you for it, and everyone will be eager to take a look at that. And as they have questions, I will be able to pass them back to you, and we'll keep the dialogue going. So I thank you very, very much for participating in our XchangeCore webinar. All right, that was terrific. That was absolutely terrific.